first want to react to Mr. Legutko. It's terrifying what he is saying. He's saying here that we were never so disunited as today, as he has forgotten what Europe was between the two world wars, as he has forgotten what Europe was in the Cold War. You have never heard about the wall and the Berlin Wall and the Iron Curtain? Europe is united now. It's not Mr. Legutko, it's not Mr. Legutko, you have another vision. You say I'm of another world than Mr. Juncker. Well, very well. For me, no problem. But doesn't say things that are completely crazy in a continent that has seen 20 million of death and victims because of nationalism and populism as you defend it today. That's the point. And I have to tell you, I didn't want to start, Jean-Claude, with this, but I find it so terrifying that somebody gives us here lessons about unity in Europe and then trying with his government to do against the rule of law, against a number of other things, things that are against European values. Sorry. But I want to applaud, sorry. But I didn't want to start. I wanted to start with applaud the State of the Union of Jean-Claude Juncker. And especially a part that nobody has talked about until now in the interventions, and it's the part on Africa, Jean-Claude. Because you're right, I think. You have done a clear proposal. They don't need charity. What they need is a true partnership between us and we. And I think it's possible to create what I call the biggest economic and trade area in the world. Because if Europe does that with Africa, it will become and is already the biggest trade area. And it will also, in my opinion, be a true alternative for Africa, for the African citizens, for the African people, to the takeover by the Chinese, what is happening every day, every week, in every investment today in Africa. So I think that this Parliament has to support you in this goal. The question for me is a little bit different than the question of the other groups' leaders. The question is, last year, you gave us your legacy, you repeated it this year, and the question is, can we put that into reality in the coming years, this legacy of you? That's the question. In this existential year of elections, with a number of threats, let's be honest, the rise of nationalist, populist is everywhere in Europe. We have a number of authoritarian leaders. Yeah, thank you. To support me, like Mr. Kaczynski, like Mr. Orban, who in fact hijacking our European parties. I think they do a little bit what Trump is doing in the Republican Party. But let's be honest, and your voice is only an affirmation of this. The inconvenient truth is that the alt-right in Europe is trying to undermine this European Union and is in fact trying to take over the European politics from within, and to do exactly the opposite than the agenda that Jean-Claude Juncker has presented us today. And for that reason, I think, and I think that everybody of us, certainly Manfred is aware of this, that in a few moments the vote we're going to have, it's so important that all pro-Europeans are united against this alt-right authoritarian tendency that we see in a number of our countries. Because leading the European Union, dear friends, is not only a question of mathematical strength, it's also a question of moral authority. And this moral authority is at stake for the moment in the European Union. Then, in the same spirit, Mr. Juncker, I want to ask you a specific thing for the Commission that you mentioned very shortly, but I want to go more in detail. I want to ask that the Commission in the coming months would introduce a package of proposals, specific proposals and specific measures to protect our elections against the foreign meddling that we have already seen in other continents and in other places in Europe. Identifying, for example, foreign agents who are active on the European social media platforms, as well as the extremist politicians with whom they are colluding. In the US, in the United States, there has been a special counsel appointed, as you all know, Robert Mueller, to investigate in the Russian interference in elections, and they have already launched dozens of indictments that had been handed down. Well, I think we need to catch up the fastest as possible by also establishing our own special prosecutor to investigate and to stop all disinformation also in Europe, and certainly before it is too late in the light of the European elections we will have next year. And my special request to you, if the Commission could take an initiative to this and to bring it to the table of the Council and to the table of the European Parliament. And then finally, my last point, I want to support you in one thing. I think that the most important point of your intervention was the point that you have made about the end of the use, or better, the end of unanimity and the use of the clause de passerelle. It's a French word. It was the most important proposal. And my proposal is, Jean-Claude, be ambitious. Put all fields, all articles of the treaty that are possible in your proposal of the clause de passerelle. Because I'm pretty sure that at the other side of the table in the Council, there will be a number of them who will not be in agreement with you. And it's all based, the best thing to ask, the maximum as possible in politics. Start with 100%. Say, I want the end of unanimity inside the European Union. Because it's the main problem for the moment to decide a number of things. For example, the migration package, Mr. President, as you have mentioned, where the Council is not capable even to decide, even when it is with a qualified majority. So my proposal is, be ambitious, put the whole package in it. All fields of foreign policy, all fields, for me taxation also. Put everything in it. And we will see what will be the end game if we support you. You have said, and that will be my conclusion, that this was in fact the Commission of the last chance. You remember that, 4 years ago. And I'm always asking myself, what can come after the Commission of the last chance in the coming years? So I think what will come is something different. The Commission that we need in the future, dear colleagues, will be more than that. It will be a type of a new, renewed European government, what we need. With one task, that is to realise further the legacy of Jean-Claude Juncker. And also the other visions that have been laid down the latest months, for example, by the French President in his Sorbonne speech. That will be the task of this new Commission. And that is also the task we will offer to the electorate, as our group, as our movement, as a real European alternative on your legacy towards the nationalist and the populist inside and outside of this House. Thank you.